So I'll try that again. Now we're messing up the mic settings. Right, so we're continuing from last night when we were saving save slots, and that was working fine. Now, what I'm going to show you now is the File Explorer, and this is the save games. So, if I press play and start a new game, we can now type in a new game. So call this new game 1, then hit OK, and it'll load us into the game. And now you'll notice that we have the save slots and new game 1. Okay, so this is now working correctly. And the way it's working is this. In the main menu, it will create the slot. Then, when it creates the normal game controller, it comes in here, checks if the slot name exists, and if it does not exist, it creates a new save object, sets the reference, and then saves it to the slot. Okay, which gives us our default save. If it does have it, then it loads it from the slot, casts it to the save data, then saves the data. Okay. So the next thing we need to look at is the changes made basically from last night. Now, it was very simple changes in manage data, which now fills out this complete box. So we can make some slight changes to this as well. What we're going to do is we're going to get this box, which is the save slots, or in fact the manage data. Okay, and then this horizontal box, we're going to pad it top and bottom. So we'll pop 15 there, 15 there, and that will just give us a better separation between these items. So now when we look at it in here, you can see that there's separation now, and it's pretty obvious that that's scroll bar and these are our names. Now the one thing we need to change here is we need to change the hover of the slot, the save slot. So when they hover over it, we're on the button now. So when they hover over it, it's going to change slightly. So if we change that to black, you'll see when we actually run this, we're just trying to now sort of beautify things a bit. You'll notice that it's not doing the damn thing. Okay. So the normal is white with the black, and this is hovered, but it's still completely see-through. So basically, if we add 0.2 to that, then stop it and save it, we can press play, and you'll notice that these now give us a little background. Now I'm quite liking that. So we can close that, So the next thing we need to do is load a game, okay? So this is carrying on from our save game slots and working with our save game slots, okay? And this is actually going to be very similar to manage data, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go to manage data, and then we're going to go here and we're going to duplicate that, and then we're going to call it load game. Then we're going to duplicate this and we're going to call it W underscore load slot. Okay, and then these two, what we're going to do is in our main menu we're going to create a new folder, and it's going to be load game. Okay, then we're going to go into our manage data, then we're going to move that to there, then we're going to move that to there. Okay, so we now have our load game and our load slot, and in this game, in this setting here, all we need to do is click to load a game. Okay, and from there we're basically going to do the same thing on the load, right? So we're going to load our controller. We don't need this, so we can delete that, right? And we are actually going to do, it's going to be W load slot. Okay, and next we're going to do something slightly different. Okay, we're going to do something slightly different with this. So basically we need to go to button, which does all our stuff here, and this is the load game here. Okay, and we can basically delete this, and we're going to copy this because we're now going to load a game. So we can load that game there, and this is going to be load slot. No, it's not. It's going to be load game. Okay, so we shall refresh the nodes there. We can save that. Okay, so now when we press this to play and we click the loads, we have basically our load games. Okay, the games that we can load from the slot. Now the one thing we need to tidy up here is in our menu controller, we now need to delete these. We don't want these being created anymore. Okay, so we can get rid of that. So the games are now going to be created by us and then loaded by us. Okay, so that allows us to begin this particular process. So if we go back to our load game, it's picking up the load games. Right, now what we're going to do in the meantime is we're going to go to our file explorer and we're going to delete these. Okay, and now, right, when we go into here, there's nothing there, no games to load, which is kind of what we expect. But if we create a new game, and let's say new game 1, okay, that it starts us in our new game, and now when we play and load, we can actually see our new game 1. Okay, which is exactly what we want. And we can manage the data on this one as well. You can see that's working nicely. We can close that. So now we want to look at our load slot, look at the graph. Now the load game is going to have now, what's this got? So in our save slot, we have our event confirm action, right? So in our save slot, load slot, we want to do basically the same thing. But this is not deleting the game in slot. This is just going to load it. Okay, so we can basically stop it at this point. Stopped it and clear that. Now remember, this is in the load slot, right? So we'll say, do you want to load this save? Okay, and we shall save that. So we create the confirm and we can test that without actually doing it. And we're going to have to hit that and get this out of the way first because it's locked to the window. So what we can do is, we've got our new game. Now this is the same game, so this isn't going to do it. Do you want to load this same game? We'll cancel that, close that, and exit. So it's doing what we want. And then on this one, right, what we're basically going to do here is we've got a slot index and the slot name, right? So what we actually need to do is for each loop, okay? For each loop, then we're going to get our controller and then our save slots, ref, and then slots, we're going to get the slots, and we need to set the game that will load as the current game, okay? Because you might be playing the game and you might be started a new game, but if you load it in a different game from earlier, then we need to set that back to be the current game, okay? So this is why we need to do a little bit more than just actually loading that save slot, okay? So what we do is we break off this, and then we take off the index and set, it's going to be set array element, right? And it's going to be these slots. So we'll pull off there, and then we've got the loop body, and then we're going to make this item, make that, okay? And then we set all of them to false. Okay? So when we load a game, what we're doing is we're making all the values false of the current game, and then for the game that was selected, we're going to make that the current slot. Okay? So once that's completed, we're going to get, actually we're not going to get a copy, right? Actually we might. Yeah, that's what we'll do. We shall get a copy, and it's going to be our slot index. Okay, then we're going to bring in our controller. Actually, we're not going to do that at all. What we're going to do is we're going to game instance. Now remember, we're going to jump into the game here, so all we're doing is we're setting the value. We have to set the value in the instance so that when we actually open the level, then this is set up and it's going to go and get the right save game file. Okay, so then we're going to have to cast to FE instance. Now this only gets done once, you know, on load, so well, it gets done once basically. So I'm not really worried about casting or trying to create the instance We could create it when we a reference to it when we create the widget, but it's not going to be any different really, because we're going to have to cast it there as well, so it doesn't really make any difference. So then what we're going to do is we're going to set save slot. Okay. And that is going to be that. Except we've got one thing we need to do. We need to get this, a copy of this, right? And then we need to do this again. But in this case, what we're going to do is, this should be make item, but anyway. In fact, what we'll do is just copy that down here, because we're going to use it a couple of times, so there's no reason not to do this. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll pop that in there, then we're going to pop that in the target array, then we're going to take our slot index from here, then our item we're going to make there, and the current game is going to be true, and we're going to break that, and then this slot can go in there. Okay, and basically this goes after. So we've got our set up our save slots and adjust this to be the current game. Okay, so that gets that done. And we shall move this across to here. Shall move this up a bit and move this across to tidy it up a bit. Move these down a little bit just to keep things nice and clear. Then we're going to bring that down a bit, then that can go in there. And now we can bring this down to here so it's a bit clearer. And that'll do us for now, right? And then what we do is we open the level, I suppose. So this would be open level by name. Okay. Then this is obviously going to be 1. Now if we have a different level, then the save slot struct is going to save that for us, and we can just load into any particular level we want at that point from the save slot. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to have a look at our FE controller, right? And if we open that up, we don't need the save game. We need the save game slot, which is in our game instance, right? So FE instance, And what we're going to do here is click on that to make it visible. Now, I don't actually know if these can be deleted, right? Don't know where that's in use, but we'll not worry about that too much. Now, I'm not 100% sure if this is going to actually do anything for us, but what we can do is we can certainly say, we're going to do it new game 2. We can OK that. We can close that again. Okay, so the FE controller doesn't like something there. And it's a user construction script. Okay. Right, so we'll bypass that for now because we don't actually need it. Okay, but we're actually going to load this from the saved game, but for the moment we don't actually need to do that. And we probably don't need to do this, we need to re-engineer that. Okay. So what we'll do in the meantime is basically we shall take that off, and it's not going to like this one little bit. Okay, so you don't like that, right? So what were they called? We'll put them back for now. We're obviously going to change it about, right? Struct research items. Okay, whatever. We don't want to be messing about with that at this point. So it's struct. I think it's struct research items, right? And that is going to be of the type struct research items. It's going to be that. Save that. We can go back to our controller and refresh that. Now, some of that is obviously now going to fail, right? Basically, that's the wrong event graph. It's actually this one we want. Now, where did we... Okay, so let's have a look at this and find the references for it. Then we can do a search on it. And now we need to find this and sort it. It was a bit blasé of me to... Yeah, it's in here. It's in this construction script. So we shall add this back in. It isn't going to be part but just to get it back up running again, and close that. We shall close that. And now what we're going to have a look at here is we should have our 2 games. So if we load the game, we should, and that loads the game, right? Now the interesting thing here is I don't think, yeah, it doesn't give us the instance, right? So what we're going to do in this event is we're going to get the instance, okay? And what we're going to do is a little print string again, and we'll do it after this clear. We'll pop it in there, and then what we'll do is we'll change this to 20 seconds, and we'll change this to white. That's white enough, just so we can see it better. And then off the game instance, we're going to say save, get save slot. As I said, this is just for a visual check that it's picking the right game, okay? So if we try this, we can press load game, and we can select new game 1. Do you want to load this save? Yes. And we've got new game 1. Okay? Now, if we stop that and press play again, we can load a game and say new game 2. And it says new game 2. Okay? So we're passing in our reference properly. But the interesting thing is if we click continue, we still get new game 2. Right? Because new game 2 was the last game we loaded. So it is now the current game. Okay? So fundamentally that's how we decide if we want to continue or if we want to load a game, right? So that is all working as it should. Okay? Which is all rather nice, I believe. So let's see if we have any other save game stuff that we need to do on the menus. So we've taken care of continue, we've taken care of new game, we've taken care of load game, and we've taken care of manage data. Okay? Manage data is just deleting saves. Okay? So fundamentally we've got all our loading and saving and all that stuff done. And the next thing is to test if we can actually save a game or save the data within a game. Okay? So what we're going to do is, as per usual, we're going to stop it just now, and then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to our controller, and we're basically going to set up a button just like these are the testing keys. Okay, and then we're going to copy this. Okay, and we're going to paste in here. Then we're going to select a key, and I don't know which key we should go with. Let's go with P. We're going to go with the P key, right? And the P key is going to generate the saves. Okay, so we're going to end up with a couple of functions here, but in the meantime, what we can do is say get all actors of class, okay, and it's going to be BP buildings, and it's going to be the base building, okay. And then we're going to get our saved data, get saved data, then we're going to set, the buildings, okay. Oh, missed that one. So we're going to set the buildings, and then we're going to save game to slot, okay. Then we're going to, now do we have our, we don't have, we have our instance set up, so we can get our instance, right, we get our instance and we can get save slot, okay, and then we can break this and we can get the slot name, okay. Now that we've done that, we should actually be able to save games. Okay, and we can kind of test this out by doing a, well, first of all, we're going to have to give ourselves some money. Okay. So I'm not 100% sure why this isn't showing us details. I'm having a bit of a products available, right, which is fine. We're going to change this to bauxite, and we're going to have 200 to play about with, and then we're going to add a second one, and we're going to have 200 copper ore to play about with. Okay, so we can save that, then we can press play, we can continue, and then now what we'll do is we'll build it straight down from here, okay, and then what we'll do is create a building here. Then we'll create another building here, and then we shall create our last building over here. Then we're going to press P, or the first thing we're going to do, right, is we're going to look in here, and one of these files should get a heck of a lot bigger, okay. So we press P, and one of them did not get any bigger. Okay. So we either aren't saving the data or there wasn't enough data to make that file any bigger. But from experience, those files do not or don't take much to get bigger. So we're going to add a breakpoint here, and then we're going to press P again. Then we're going to step over and we're going to find out what's in there. Now we have got lots of stuff. And we step over. And I really need to find out if this branches or not, but we're going to resume. And we shall stop that for now, right? And we shall branch this. So if we branch this, we can basically find out if that was true or false. Okay, that's basically the add a breakpoint. Save that. Okay. Now, the interesting thing is in our controller now, we should be attempting to load the data. Okay? So when we press play and continue, we are certainly doing that. We're loading the game for slot, which we're doing. We're stepping over, and we have our save game data, and we're setting that in there, right? So we are certainly setting our save game data. Okay? And we can resume that, and what we can do is we can make this viewable in the editor. Okay, now I'm not 100% sure why it's doing that, because it's FE save data, so the default value should certainly not be an image. Anyway, right. And resume. So if we go to our controller, we should be able to check what saved data we actually have. Okay. And it would appear we don't have any. Or at least you can't really show this. Right, okay, so the only way we can really check this is loading it. And if we get the saved data, we can type buildings, get the buildings, and then basically for each. And that's my dog thinking something's outside. And we can basically do a print string on this and get a display name. So we can do a print string. Okay. And we can loop on this, and that'll get us the display name. Now it isn't going to spawn it in at this point, we'll still to do that, right? But the purpose here is to find out if we have these buildings in our save file. Which we should. So continue and resume, and we have something A BP player beep. Okay, so that's an interesting concept. So we'll disable that breakpoint, right? And we shall put a breakpoint here and here. We shall save that. We'll stop that just now. We shall run it again and press continue. Okay, now our buildings, we have the player base and we have the player warehouse, but we don't, for some reason we haven't saved the other buildings. Now, okay, so I'm not sure why it's doing that. This is an interesting problem. So this is why we get these, right? Because some of the actual buildings are showing up as empty. So what I'm going to do is we're going to create a new game, right? And we're going to say, what we're going to say here, new game 3, I suppose. So we set up as new game 3. Okay. Now, what we want to do is check how many buildings go into this. So we've got it breaking there, right? And the question is, okay, so basically what we do is we create these buildings again, and in fact doing just 2 of them is going to work for us. Right, and there's me trying to save there. Okay, so we save this. Okay, we get all actors of class. Now if we do that, we can step over here and you can see that we have the player base, the refiner and the smelter. Okay, so the refiner and the smelter are the ones that we've created, and those seem to be the ones that aren't getting saved. Okay, so what we need to do is resume that. Okay, and it's told us it's saved correctly at this point, and we can resume that and disable that, and we can resume at that, which we've done. So if we now stop that, press play and then continue, okay, it's going to start, its buildings aren't saving. Okay, now I'm beginning to think that we might need to save the buildings separately. Okay, so let's set that up anyway, right? So in our save data, we're gonna have to open it up, right? We'll try and get this working first, and then we'll work on what the problem is. Now, these are a child of the base building, right? Which was why I thought that would be fine. Now, you'll see the warehouse is a child, right? And so the two that were working okay was, what was it, a house? I don't think I've even got a house. So that's bizarre in its own right. It was the player base, was the yeah, it was the player base and the warehouse. Okay, so that was the difference. So player base, let's have a look at that. And that's basically saying its parent class is CPP, its parent class is CPP, so is that, so is that. So I don't understand why these I mean these are in the water, right? The difference is, okay, I'm going to try something, okay? Let's try something here. We might have to just save the data on these because I'll show you what I mean. I'll show you what my logical thinking is. These are actually in the world before we start, right? So these are actually spawned into the world or placed in the world, right? And that's the difference between these. Okay, so if we look at maps and we place an actual refiner down in the world, okay, I am guessing, let's go back to buildings. So if we place like a refiner here, right, what I'm guessing is that this is going to save. But if we place it in the game, it's not saving, right? Which gives us an issue, okay? But it's a different issue from what we were expecting, okay? But in the meantime, we just need to check this out and find out what the actual problem is. So we go back to our main menu. We continue and resume. Okay. And now what we do is we press P. And if we step over that, it gives us all. You'll notice this time it has given us, well, it's given us a refiner, which is fine. So we can resume that. Okay. And then we have to stop it again and press play and then continue. The question is, we have our 3. Okay. So now I'm guessing that resume, and it's given us our refinery here. Okay. So our problem is that for some reason it recognizes stuff that's spawned in the world, but it doesn't recognize stuff that we manually build. Okay? So if I try to put the exact same thing down here and then press P to save it, right? So if I step over this, the problem is you'll notice we have our two refiners, okay? But we do not have them when we press play, resume, right? So when we stop it and we try to continue, we're only going to get one refiner back. Right? Because this is going to have none at that other slot, which is obviously a problem. Okay, so we have an issue. Now, the next thing that we need to do is to figure out, well, do we figure out a way around about this, or do we have to create, and even if it's going to work, I might try it, okay? But I'm going to have a quick break, cigarette and drink, and I should be back in 2 minutes, okay? And we shall continue and see if we can solve this problem. Okay guys, we're back. Gonna have to figure this one out. So the first way I'm going to try and figure this one out is I'm going to find out if it's because it's a base building, it's a child. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our save data. Okay. Now this, as I said, is just for technical issues. We're going to come in here and we are going to create another variable, and let's call it refineries. Now, as I said, this is the way I've done it before, and this actually works, right? But I don't think I've actually saved. So this is going to be BP underscore refinery, okay? So it's going to be BP refiner. I'm not sure if this is going to save or not, to be honest. It's going to be interesting to find out. Now, normally when I've done this before, I have just basically saved data and then basically loaded up the data and transferred it. Say for example in an inventory, it's been saving data of items in the inventory, which obviously come from a data table, so you're just basically picking values and then stuffing them into a variable. But in this case we're actually trying to save the blueprint along with its transform, its settings and everything else. So I don't know exactly if I need to put in I'm probably going to have to put in a bit of back work to this. But anyway, let's try it. So what we're going to do is we've got our BP refineries, right? So when we actually save the game now, we are only going to get refineries, okay? So we're looking for BP refinery, refiner, okay? And in the saved game, we're going to be saying refineries, and we're going to be setting the refineries instead of setting the buildings, okay? And then when we save that, we shall go down to here, and we shall get refineries, and then that will go in there. So this is going to give us a test of whether it's because of the type of blueprint and it's childed or not, right? So basically what we can do is, if we go back to our maps, okay, and I think we put in a refinery and there it's there. So if we delete that, then save our contents, okay, and then what we can do is we have to go back to our main menu map, okay, and then if we press play, continue, resume that, and then we build a refinery, okay, and then we hit P, So this is going to get all our refineries, which is basically one of them. So there we go. Okay. Hang on a minute. Well, tell you what, I think I've goofed. I think that is working. I think it's just it doesn't know the display name. Right? If we resume it, okay, and then we stop it and press play again, and press continue, and resume it, you'll notice there's nothing, right? But I'm not convinced that there's nothing. Okay? Bear with me on that. I think we can get a variable off the refinery. Like, let's say process. Okay. Let's save that. Now let's look at a refinery, okay? And I think it is because it doesn't have a display name, because it hasn't actually been spawned. Right? So if we look at buildings again, we can go to the refinery. Okay, we can say building type, current recipe. Okay. So we can go back to here and say building type, get building type, okay, and that we print. Okay, so do that, resume that, and there we have it. But the thing is, it says it's a minor now, which it isn't. Okay, so fundamentally what we actually need to do, so it's not saving the blueprint, it's actually saving the instance of the blueprint, or a clean instance of the blueprint, right? So you'll notice if I press buildings and I build another refiner, okay, if I build, well, that's not going to build two refiners, right? So what we'll do is we'll build two refiners, right? There we go. Okay, so if we build the two refiners, you'll notice that, well, damn it. Okay, we're going to have to stop that for a minute. Okay, whatever. Hi, Salim. How you doing, mate? So what we need to do is get rid of that for now. We need to double click on our refiner, and in our refiner, is that a refiner? Yeah, apparently it is. And this is actually in the default. Okay, okay, that's okay. What I'm going to do is we're going to put it back the way it was, right? And I think we just picked the wrong thing. So if we go back to our controller, right, and we put it back the way it was, so basically that goes to there, that picks out buildings again, and this is base building, so this is BP base building, okay? We save that, okay? And then down here, we change this again, and we get buildings, and we do that, and we save that, okay? And if we do that and continue and resume and resume, well, it has got the 4, but they're all, well, actually we saved them as BP buildings, so what we should do, right? Okay, sorry about this, but we really need to do it. Right, it doesn't like this print string thing, but that's okay because that is because we saved the refineries. Okay, so what we'll do in the meantime is we shall delete everything and minimize that again. Then what we'll do is press play again, we'll remove that, we'll move this down a bit, and we'll press new game, and we shall say new game 1. My mind went blank there for a second for some unknown reason. So we're going new game 1, okay? And then we're going to create that building. Then we're going to create this building, okay? Then we're going to save them. And it's getting the base buildings and it's plugging them into buildings, so that's fine. And we resume that. Okay, then we quickly stop it, and then we quickly run it again and press continue. And now I am hoping that this says something other than nothing. Well, it's given us a minor, okay? It's given us a minor. So, in effect, this basically means that we cannot use the buildings to save data. Okay? Now, I don't know why it's given us this error. Access none, trying to get. That's interesting. So, apparently it doesn't have this building type. Okay. So it's basically defaulting everything. it's basically defaulting everything to minor, which would be the default setting, and that's why basically we're getting this error along with everything else. Right, let's stop that for now. Now, the next thing is we want to look at our base building. Okay. So if we look at base building, and look at the event graph, but what we're really interested in here is this. Is can rotate. Okay. So what we'll do is these are not set. There might be some, if anybody knows out there, by the way, if anybody's watching this and knows the answer to this, it doesn't seem to be saving the underlying data along with the building. Now, I don't know if that is normal. I don't know if that's the norm or not. If that's just the way it works. Okay. That would kind of be a pain. And would make things a heck of a lot more complicated. But, I mean, it's not that big of a deal, really. So anyway, right. So what we need here is we want to print the current recipe, okay? So basically what we can do is we can pull off here and say current recipe, then break that and break that, okay, and then we can basically say that product out, okay. Now when we press play and continue, if we actually create this and then we actually set it up with a current recipe, okay, there we go. So we can select the recipe and close that. Then obviously we can check it down here. Wherever it is. Refiner, where's refiner? Okay, let's type it in. Refiner. Okay, now we have a recipe. We have a current recipe and it's iron ore, okay? So we can save that by pressing P, resume, then we can stop it. It does not like something going on there. Well, it doesn't like that save game basically. Now the question is, resume, and we get none. Right, so basically if you tell it to save blueprint, it does not save the underlying data behind the blueprint. Okay? I think that's basically the issue here. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of investigation into this to see if there's a way of actually doing it, or if we basically have to get structs of the data that requires saved and then transfer it into the actual, we need to spawn it again and then basically get the stuff the values in, right? Now the other interesting thing would be is to get the transform, get the actor transform, and then basically print that and see what it gives us. I'm expecting everything to be 0. Okay. Now, strangely enough, it's not. But that's... Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to stop that, right? And that is obviously because the one item cannot do it. Although it's still kind... Well, actually, well, that kind of makes sense, right? Because we can't get a transform if it isn't spawned. Although, having said that, if we were saving the blueprint, it would have a transform. And then we'd spawn it at that transform point, right? So it kind of makes sense and kind of doesn't. And it's kind of bizarre. Okay, so I'm going to grab a quick cigarette to have a think about this, and then I shall be back in a moment and we'll take it from there. Okay, we are back, and we've had a thought. Okay? What if the save game does not store the object, but it stores a reference? Okay? Now, this might be the wrong way. I'm really wanting to go and actually go and have a read, but I don't want to do that on stream, obviously. So what I'm going to try is, in our save game, data, we're going to create another variable, and it's going to be buildings refs, and it's going to be base building, but it's going to be a class reference. Okay, now I think this is not going to work. But we shall try it. Because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to try things and see if they work or not. Now, I have no faith in this working at all. Zero. But we can always try it. And out of saved data, we can get buildings refs. Actually, we wanted to set that. So that's buildings, set building refs. And I have no faith in this whatsoever, because this is just not okay. So we'll get class, and that only returns one value. So obviously that is not right. And we need to change up our FE save data, because this is definitely not right. So this is base building and let's do it as a soft reference. Okay. So we go back to our FE controller, go building refs, and that didn't work. Right, so we basically have a problem here. Soft. So we can't change these to references. So basically that is not going to work either. Right, we're going to do a Google search. I'll bring it over in a minute. Save data with blueprint UE4 right now it's basically I think it's basically going to say you can't do it. And as usual, we don't have an awful lot of information on this. And let's see what we've got. Okay, so we shall try main widget. Let's have a look at this. Okay, Discord's we're not using that. Right, okay. Right, we're not interested in any of that, right? We've done all that. We're actually interested in saving the data. Can you save a blueprint with the data? Is the major question here. Right. Now, they're certainly not doing that. Okay, so it looks like, as I was saying, you save the data and then basically you slam the data back in. Right, so that was pretty useless. That was pretty much all we knew, plus it was in C++, which we're probably not going to do, but we might do later depending. Right, so basically what we need to do is we need to create a structure for saving buildings. Then we need to create a structure for saving splines, and then we need to do it for everything, which is awesome. Okay. And that is going to take quite a bit of work, I would imagine. So fundamentally we're going to basically take away these breakpoints and basically delete these, and we're probably going to have to delete this thing. We are still going to have to get this, right? But what we're going to have to do is, for each of these, we're going to have to split it down into its actual data, that we're going to use, and then we're going to have to reset it up. So I think that is going to be a rather large and interesting stream for tonight. And as I said, there's I'm not really going to be able to complete very much in the next 10-15 minutes, so I'm going to call it at that. Thanks if you've joined or watched or are watching it later. You can check out the description for my previous games, Discord, subscribe and all that stuff, and thank you very much again, and have a good evening.